Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Dawn Jarvis Show, the podcast where I talk to leaders, professionals, entrepreneurs who are part of my diverse nurse network about who they are, what they do, and why they do it. I also talk to them about how they manage their business and their health and well-being, and it's brought to you by dawnjarvis.com. Today, my guest is Casey Berman. Casey is the founder of Leave Law Behind, which is at www.leavelawbehind.com, the leading coaching program and community to help unhappy attorneys career transition out of the legal industry into new alternative careers they love, are good at, and that pay them well. Casey is on a mission to show everyone who suffers that there is a better way. And today we're going to be talking about value, and that for others arises when you lead with your unique genius. Life expands or contracts in relation to the amount of courage you have, and there are only two emotions, love or fear. And which one will you choose to feel? Hi, Casey. How are you doing? It's so good to see you.
Well, Don, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure. I'm honored to be on the show and excited to talk about these things and unpack them.
Yeah, we've had a chat before, so I'm really looking forward to the chat. And what I usually ask is, how did you get to from where you were actually, to where you are now? What's your story, Casey?
Yes, I won't bore everyone with my life details, but I always joke that, I was a Jewish kid who didn't like blood. So I didn't go to medical school. I went to law school right after college here in the United States. And, I can joke about it and laugh about it, but it was true. I really had a very narrow view of what was possible for me. And I'm 48, so I grew up in the 80s and 90s, went to law school because that's just kind of what you're supposed to do. And here in California, San Francisco, where I'm born and raised, Silicon Valley, I mean, so much opportunity here. And even then, myself and so many other people just had this, I'm not an engineer, so I'll become a lawyer, maybe a doctor. And so went to law school because I felt like I needed to, and are supposed to do that, and didn't really jive with me. Had a really good time in university and enjoyed what I was studying, but that just wasn't the case in law school. And was a lawyer for 4 or 5 years, and then and had a great plum lawyer job, tech company in-house, and I definitely don't want to sound like a diva or high maintenance, but there was just always something nagging in me, like, this is just not it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so after about 5 years doing software licensing and in-house counsel work, I left. And I've done a number of things since. All those who wander are not lost. But one thing I have done is I just started writing about my experience of just feeling misaligned between my skills and strengths and what a lawyer job is. And I gave a talk at my alma mater way back when in 2009. And the blog, leavelawbehind.com, just came out of that, and the media picked it up, and we've since then I think we've helped over 150 lawyers to leave the law for real non-law jobs. Like, they've moved from law to litigate to out of litigation to operations to marketing to recruiting, you name it, to sales to business development to all types of jobs, which is great. And they just feel empowered, and they're not anxious or depressed anymore, and they actually enjoy what they do day to day. So that's what we do at Leave Law Behind.
That's amazing. And working with these lawyers, and I noticed you say unhappy lawyers, and I was thinking about the same around nursing, because I'm a nurse, and I didn't leave nursing because I was unhappy, or maybe I was unhappy in the environment, but still wanted to nurse. I'm really interested in what you're saying about they move to jobs that aren't being a lawyer, but are they using the skills that they've developed are they transferable skills?
It's a great point. One of the issues we get from lawyers who, when they're wary about leaving or wary about joining our program, is they say, I don't want to start over.
Yeah.
33, I'm 38, I'm 43, I'm 48, I'm 53, I'm 58. And, I don't want to start over. And there definitely is an element of learning new things, but that's more of a beginner's mindset and reinventing yourself. They don't start over because, like you were pointing out, they have a ton of transferable skills. I think I've cataloged over, I think it's 55, 57 skills that they have that we help. But they're the adult in the room. They know how to upsell. They can put out fires. They communicate well. They listen well. They write persuasively. I can go on and on and on about this.
Yes,
And
I love that.
right. And these are all skills that are in demand outside of a lawyer job. And when our attorney, when the members of the program, when they see that and they get it, and they're sick of hearing it from me, they hear it in informational interviews, they hear it from other people,
Yeah.
that's when it clicks. Oh my God, all of these lawyer skills, all of this stuff I can only do as a lawyer is actually something that's in demand in other roles that doesn't have the stress of a lawyer, or that I feel more comfortable, or that has more meaning or purpose. Once they realize that, then it takes off.
Yeah. And you have a program that they follow in a community as well.
We do.
What's that like?
It's great. It's very personal for me because I wrote and a series of articles years ago for Above the Law, that's here in America, and it's and global, and it's kind of an industry newsletter and website for lawyers and jobs and how to move. And they have a career center, and I was honored they asked me to write for them. And I wrote out a set of 5 articles about how to leave the law, and it really pulled from my own personal idea, right? Overcoming fears, becoming comfortable with a new professional identity, getting a better relationship with money, your unique genius, I call it, what you're really good at, lining that, and then getting out there and finding jobs, 5 steps. Well, those are the 5 modules of the program.
Yeah.
And it's very personal. It's something that's really proven. And so we take them through that. And they really, the old saying, you kind of have your belts and your belt and suspenders to keep your pants up. We have not only self-paced videos and a course for them to go through, but my business partner, fellow former attorney, Adam Millett, and I are with them each step of the way. So they get personal in touch, and then they also can do all of this material on their own as well. So,
Do non-lawyers join your program? Do you feel there's something for everyone there?
there is. We've had non-lawyers, particularly engineers, some architects, a few other salespeople have said, I got to find something new. I'm burnt. Really similar. They're just not attorneys. And so we don't let them into the program, but it's getting me thinking about creating something like this
Yeah,
for other people.
yeah. Because I would say that I think any professional, so I was nursing since I was 18, and when I first went into training, I did my degree later, because I'm quite old. We did it a different way then, but I think everybody has thinks about, oh, you get to the top of your profession, you do everything that you can do, and you make some choices then, don't you? You either diversify or go into leadership and management, or you leave. I don't know, that those aren't the only choices, but I think a lot of what you say resonates for a lot of professionals that may, and I think it's, we ask children, because they are children, young people, to decide what their career is quite young, don't we? And if they do the thing that they go to university for, to college for, and they make that into a profession, it can be a lifelong gig. I know it was for me. And then you sort of that you may or you may not, you might be really happy with it, and but you may then have a discussion about with yourself, actually, and whatever stage of life you are, about, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life, or could I do something else? So I think there's scope there, both for you and perhaps for me, to do something with all sorts of people who might be doing the same thing. What do you think?
I agree, and I've had an engineer reach out to me about whether I could begin working with her. So it's something that I'm starting to think about. And I have more years in doing non-law work in
Yeah,
corporate America than I have
yeah,
as a lawyer now at my age. But it's interesting as you move up in a job, and there's that point where you kind of work in a job because of the creativity, because it aligns with you. And the irony of it is, as great as you get in your role, you ultimately, and this is out of law, this is something that we see also in corporate America, you get to that point, and it's, I don't want to say it's a threshold moment, I don't want to say there's a fork and that there's only 2 ways to go, but for the most part, you can either move up and become a manager and do more administrative work, which ironically is not necessarily the work that you loved in the first place,
exactly. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or you choose not to do that, and you either leave the company because there's no other choice, or more and more what we're seeing is you become what's called an individual contributor. So you keep doing the work you wanted, whether it's working with clients or doing the research or the creativity. But if you're not going to manage people and kind of go the administrative route, sometimes companies don't know what to do with you, and
Yeah.
particularly when you get to a certain age. And I think
Yeah.
that's sad. And
Yeah.
what I am excited about, though, is with the pervasiveness of the internet, and just sort of new values we have. Why does my next step at 40, 45, 50 need to be to build an empire? Why
Yeah.
do I need to have people
Yeah.
under me?
Yeah.
And oftentimes you're not you may not be that leader, you may not be the extrovert type, or if you are a leader, but you just don't want to do it. Now all of a sudden you have to make that choice. And I'm seeing that still pervades, but I am seeing less and less that individual contributor is becoming more and more of a role that people can go to, and that just kind of keeps that fire burning inside of them.
Yes, yeah, I could talk to you for ages about that. Actually, it's really, really true, and perhaps something we'll talk about later. Now, you say that value for others arises when you lead with your unique genius. So tell me about unique genius. I
Yeah,
love
so
the sound of that, by the way. Unique
thank you.
genius, very good.
Unique genius. Yeah, I learned that from another career coach I had many, many years ago. Aaron Ross is his name, and it's a great term,
Mhm.
and I like it. And we use it in the Leave Law Behind program because a lot of lawyers, and I think a lot of professionals, a lot of people in
Mhm.
general, in this kind of consciousness that we're in, we don't do day to day in our job or even kind of in our life what we really are good at. We don't do it because we don't think we can make money off the stuff we're good at. We don't do it because for some reason growing up, what we were good at was repressed, or our parents or the society felt like, well, that's just not what you do, and be realistic and be pragmatic, right? Whatever the case may be. If you're good with people, well, who's going to get a job of just being good with people? You need to go learn numbers. Even though if you Google empathy is like one of the top job skills now in the world,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
Or then there's the idea of like, well, you're just good at numbers. Don't you realize sales is where you need to be? You need to learn how to be with people. And I'm not saying to expand your reach. We can be multitask and be a generalist, like that book Range talks about. But I am saying that a lot of times, I think many of us really repress the skills and strengths we're good at. So for the first time, or one of the first times that we do at Leave Law Behind, is we really have these unhappy lawyers understand what they're good at. Because one of the main reasons they're unhappy is because they're doing a job, law, where the job description does not fit at all or only fits a little bit with their skills and strengths. I mean, really think about the puzzle pieces here.
yeah,
If you have skills and strengths, that's what we bring to a job, and the job description doesn't match those skills and strengths, and you're still going to move forward with it, that's a recipe for misalignment. And
yeah,
misalignment is health issues, is anxiety. I mean, the reason lawyers have so much depression and anxiety is because the ones who are unhappy, let me be clear, the world needs lawyers.
yes,
It needs lawyers. I think we just have too many of them.
yeah,
And many of them went in it for the wrong reason. It's funny, I joke about being a Jewish kid who went into law school, but like I hear you could fill that blank with all types of ethnic, familial, religious backgrounds. They
absolutely.
all went in because support mom and dad, because that's what our family does, whatever the case may be. And so when you don't have, so a unique genius is not going to a job for stability, security, because it'll make mom and dad proud, but really it's flipping it 180 degrees and saying, what am I really good at? Understanding those skills and strengths, and then finding jobs that match it or come close to matching it. When you have that paradigm working, that's where contentment comes. That's where value comes from. Because I'm not saying you just phone in, it's easy for you. There's stress, there's deadlines, but you can deal with it. You enjoy it. And when you're ultimately doing something you're good at, you do it really well, people will need it. And that's where value to others and to yourself and kind of to the world as a whole comes from.
That's amazing. I really like that, and I think um, it's a good to explore that, isn't it? What you the alignment in whatever job you're doing, or whatever whatever career you're doing. Um, does it sort of meet those things that you're good at, and if it doesn't, how can you, or do you need to do something else? And I think, you know, it's right, all jobs, all professions, they have their stresses and strains and the things, but that you maybe don't enjoy, but it needs to be happy,
Yeah.
whatever people say happiness is, that you need to sort of, it does need to align with your values and what you're good at. So I really, really love that. So you talk about courage, and I really love that, because I think there is an element of courage. You talked about, you know, people not wanting to start again, and to sort of, you know, to leave any profession or to start your own business or whatever you're going to do. It takes a bit of courage, and you say that life expands or contracts in relation to the amount of courage. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. You know, I heard there's a drink here in America called Snapple. I don't know if you have it
Okay,
over
I have
there.
heard of it, yes.
Okay. Yeah. It's a tea infused. I used to think it was healthy until my wife told me how much sugar's in it. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I guess it's not that healthy, but it does taste pretty good. And I actually saw that when you'd open the cap, you could look, and they had little quotes in there. And so I want to give Snapple credit. It was an unknown, but I found that many years ago. Your life expands or contracts in relation to the amount of courage you have. And, you know, you mentioned happiness, and happiness is something that everyone kind of nods their head at, but we're not sure really how to define it. You know, happiness for me is, and I've heard this mentioned, is that it's really the process of becoming your ideal self. And it's a process. It's not a journey. You know, we want journeys. Journeys are easy. You go here and then you go there. But
Yeah.
ultimately in life, there's no end game. There's nowhere to get to. I've heard the line that, you know, if you were flying from San Francisco to London and London back to San Francisco, if your whole goal was just to get to the end, I wouldn't leave San Francisco. I would stay at SFO, the airport, and just stay there. Why go on the journey, right?
Yeah.
So happiness is really a process, and that's not very sexy. And the advertisers can't really sell you a process. They'll sell you a Lexus because you have a destination to get in mind, right? But a process,
Yeah.
but it's really a process because life is cyclical. And we live in this world of time and space, you know, kind of a linear. Einstein told us it's non-linear, but we still don't listen to him. We think it's linear. And so we listen this time and we're like, okay, but it's really a process, and things happen, you learn, you reinvent yourself, and so on. And so you're becoming your ideal self, and you may never be the ideal perfect self, but you're feeling alignment, you're feeling more joy and bliss. You're able to deal things that would really whack you out and you get anxious and you'd lose it. Now you can step away from it. Doesn't mean you don't feel the fear, but you're able to observe it and you're able to not let it consume you, right? In my opinion, it doesn't sound that, but that's happiness. Happiness is really that idea of that I'm not my thoughts. I'm something else. Now that's really boring, and no one can sell it to you. And it's just kind of like, wait a minute, I'm not who I am. I'm in a matrix and I unplug. Well, then what? Right? I just go meditate and be boring, right? So but there is that element of like, when you really, if it's not being something sold to us or an experience, happiness is kind of just quiet. It's kind of just peace, you know? And I think a lot of us, we look at it like, well, that's not exactly what I had in mind. So when it comes to this idea around courage, courage is really the energy, the happening, if you will, the phenomena of moving forward, even though you have fear. It's there. Now we talk about overcoming fear in Leave Law Behind. You know, I'm afraid I can't put a resume together. I'm afraid I'll have to have the talk with my partner at the law firm. I'm afraid of what my parents will think. I'll disappoint people. I'll burn bridges, all of that. Sometimes you can't overcome the fear. I've overcome the fear of, you know, sleeping, the fear of the boogeyman under the bed. Like I don't have that fear anymore, right? But I still have some. And sometimes it's just about mitigating it. And courage is really that, okay, the fear is there. I see it. I'm still going to move forward. And so when you have that courage, you still move forward. And when you move forward, maybe forward's the wrong word because it's linear. When you still happen and you don't retreat, what that really means then is you create opportunities, and opportunities present themselves to you. And you get on, you're introduced to Dawn, and now you're all of a sudden you're on her podcast because you weren't afraid, Casey, that you would say something wrong, or I would say too much, or Dawn may think I'm not a good host, not a good guest, or there's all these fears that could run through your mind.
Yes.
But if you just overcome them or mitigate them or just kind of move forward even despite them, your life expands.
I agree totally. And I'm really into that. If you make a decision and you decide to go with it, the opportunities will present themselves to you literally because you made that decision. And whether you call that manifesting, whatever you call that, I really believe that if you have a goal and you decide to move forward with it, and you're so right, there are all these things that could happen, it might not work, and but if you decide to go with it anyway, and it is brave, it is courageous to do that. But I talk about taking risks, but I like to say I'm not risk averse, but I take calculated risks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that life is about taking risks. It's about to have the courage of taking risks, and also thinking about, the worst case scenario, what's going to happen, and then thinking about, so if you are aware of the worst case scenario, then you can go forward, because and then because if you're aware of it, it's not a surprise, but you plan against it, and you almost mitigate. I think you said you mitigate against those risks. I used to do a lot of risk management in my career as well, because you're aware of the risks of what's going to happen, so you plan for those risks, and you have some things that are going to be in place in case that happens. But I think courage is a really interesting thing, and to have the confidence to embrace it and to go forward. And and that is linear. I really like the thing about linear, and whether it's cyclical or linear, but it's sort of like things happen and you learn, and then you move forward, and then then it happens again, and it doesn't always turn out how you think it's going to turn out, but something always happens. That's how I think. Even the things that I'm really scared of, I think you just got to go for it, because something will happen, something positive will happen regardless.
Well, it's gold what you just said, and a few nuggets there that came up is, one, it may not happen how you want it to happen.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the word goals, and we all have goals. I've tried to focus on the word preference. I have preference how I want things to happen.
Yeah.
But the problem where I run into is, I think the main point of suffering in the world, particularly on our micro level with individuals, is expectations. And we have an expectation that something needs to happen. I need to start this business. It needs to make this money in this time. And the suffering comes from the disconnect of what happens in the world compared to our expectations. And when our expectations are not 100% fully met, we get bummed out. We get ticked off. We give up. And we have to realize, one, that just because you had that expectation doesn't mean it's going to happen. And two, let go, because what did happen might be exactly what you wanted, might be what you need. So there's that element. The other element is confidence. And confidence, from actually the root of the word, I think it's French, it might be Latin, but if you go back to confidence really means trust and faith. And I'm not religious, institutionalized religious at all, but there's an element of faith, regardless where you find it, but just having trust that you'll be okay. Because ultimately, the worst that can happen, what are we really afraid of? I'll tell you, death. Either literal or figurative, that our body, we're so stuck on our bodies. I need this body to survive. I need to keep living, right? The other thing is, figuratively, I'm going to leave my job. I'm going to start something new. I'm going to run out of, it's not going to work. My spouse isn't going to like it. My in-laws are going to hire a blimp saying how a failure I am. She's going to take the kids away from me. I'm going to lose my house, social pariah, won't have any friends. I'm going to end up in a box under a freeway overpass, and I'm going to die. I mean, that literally, subconsciously, we're doing that spiraling of, oh my God, this is what's going to happen. No, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You can do calculated risk. You can take uncalculated risks, but when you really realize that I'm afraid of dying, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
Yeah. And also I really like what you said there, because you're right that it's and dying's the end point, isn't it? But the rest of it is about loss, isn't it? And so dying's the ultimate in loss and grieving your own life, I suppose. but it's sort of like, you know, what will people think of me? Will I lose prestige, status, money? You know, it's all about grieving those things. And I like to think that that, you know, that going back to, it doesn't always turn out the way you want it to, and that, you know, so I started my business because I got laid off, and that was not what I was expecting to happen. It happened at all, and it wasn't on my timeline, but I chose to see it as an opportunity, and that opportunity was quite scary. And then, you know, there was quite a bit of kickback from people, you know, from my family, you know, even my children, because they, what about the house, exactly, you know, where we're going to live and stuff like that, and how is that going to work? But going back to the courage thing, it's like, you know, the worst thing that could happen is that you would die, and that's not going to happen unless, you know, unless it's your time. And so, you know, and I suppose it's our duty, isn't it, to do the most we can with the time we have, and then, you know, and not go regret, what if I'd have done this, what if I'd have done that. And then, you know, there's a saying here, there's no pockets in shrouds, is that you can't take it with you. So even all those status things and the money and stuff like that, you can't take it with you, so you need to enjoy it, don't you, while you're still living.
And that's the process. That's the process of being happy. When you were in the thick of it, when it came to brass tacks, and your mother or people are on a Tuesday at 4:38 p.m. are saying to you, what are you doing? How are you going to make this happen? Please find another job, or please do this, or please do that. And you're dealing with that fear, and dealing with that anger, and dealing with that feeling of unsupported, you know, how do you, and that's the process that just makes you stronger. You know, when you lift weights, when you go to the gym and work out, the way muscle grows to get stronger and bigger is it rips apart, and then you let it heal. And when it grows back, it's literally scar tissue. When it grows back, it's stronger, not rigid, but it's flexible, but it's stronger, and it grows and gets bigger. And whether you're doing that for strength or aesthetic or whatever the case may be, but that's how it works. And so before you progress, you need to regress. Sometimes you need that regression. You know, everything, I mean, this is the yin and yang. We live, ultimately, if we were to go to, you know, I think the most enlightened people in the world, wherever, you know, that feeling, there's one feeling, just love, just bliss, just, they're able to get that. I'm not able to get there yet, right? I still live in this matrix, this dualistic world. I'm trying to, but we live in a dualistic world. And so but that's okay, because everything, a front needs a back. You can't tell who I am until you have my background.
Yeah.
Right? You need this contrast to be able to discern how things are relative in your life. You won't know you're progressing until you've had regressing. And that's the cyclical nature of it. The problem we run into is our expectations don't want regressing. We don't want to take a step back. We always want to be moving forward. And that's just not possible. You know, like on Wall Street here in America, they want every company needs to have growth every quarter. Otherwise the stock is going to get battered and lose. I was like, what are you talking about? Amazon just came out, and I guess they didn't have as great a quarter as, you know, God expected. I don't know. It's okay. Amazon has regression sometimes. You know, SHIT happens. Like it just happens, even to Amazon, right? So it's okay to regress. We literally have these unrealistic expectations from Wall Street. And Wall Street is apparently the most objective, numbers oriented. No, it's not. It's emotional. There's a bunch of emotional people who are either playing the game or are victims of the game. So you look at it and you just kind of look at the consciousness of our world, that we're never supposed to take a step back. Now, don't take 40 steps back. If you take a step one back, don't dwell on it and never move forward. But it's okay to have that balance, because you really won't know you're progressing until you've had a taste of what regressing tastes like.
Love that. I love that. And talking about a dualistic world, you talk about there's only two emotions, love or fear, and it's important to decide which one you're going to choose to feel. So talk to me about that, Casey.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound too touchy-feely or like a Hallmark card here with love and fear. And this isn't my idea. I've heard this from some of the great sages. So when you think of love, you think of confidence. There's romantic love. There's confidence, collaboration, bliss, joy, alignment, in the zone. I'm a big sports fan, right? Like in the zone, in the flow. Think of artists, like that's love. Fear is anxiety, depression, anger, shame, guilt. It's that. There can be a role for fear. I mean, anger has chips on the shoulder. I mean, a lot of things have been created with people with chips on the shoulder or who are anger. Guilt and shame, I don't know, as creative as they can be, maybe something. But for me, the world we're in is one where you either look at something through a lens of confidence, collaboration, connectedness, or you look at it through a lens of, I told you so, it's fear. I'm afraid of it. I feel like I'm being attacked. Now, ultimately, after you die, the most enlightened people out there, the Dalai Lama, I don't know, the great sages of the past, I think they may have gotten in their meditation or whatever it is. Maybe this is how you feel when you go on ayahuasca or something like that. But you get to a point where there's really only one emotion, and that's love. It's not dualistic. It's blinding white light. I don't know what it is. And some people can get there and it's just beautiful. But coming down to where we are, there's both. And the idea then is how, not that listen, fear is here. My thought is my thought. If we resist that anxious thought, now we're desiring to not desire that thought, which is desire in and of itself, which is what the Buddha talked about. And so it's okay to have a fearful thought. I had one right before I got on the show. I had one this morning. I had one yesterday at 6:22 p.m. It's okay. The question is whether I'm also able to have a foot out and step out of that. You know, they say that thoughts are a veil to the truth. And the truth really is we're all okay. We're all good. We're all loved. There's this idea that really pervades us. This might be original sin from the Bible. It's something that I think the media perpetuates even in the secular world, is that we're separate. You're a bag of skin. I'm a bag of skin. You're a bag of skin and bones. I'm a bag of skin and bones. You're different than I am. And then our mind, which we point to in our head, our brain's in our head, our mind, where's our mind? We don't know where our mind is. Yeah. Scientists haven't found that. No. But our mind feels, well, I'm going to be attacked, and we're separate. If we listen to Disney movies, John Lennon, Bob Marley, I mean, all of them, we're all one.
Yeah.
But it's easy to view ourselves as separate. So when we view ourselves as separate, we're different. I have to get one up on people. I'm going to be attacked. We literally are looking at the world through fear. And I'm just saying what other, I see so far because I stand on the shoulder of giants, right? It's that come from love, come from collaboration. And the idea is that if someone says something in an email or rolls their eye at you on a Zoom call or something, you can either look at that like as an attack. Oh my God, I messed up. Or you can just say, what meaning do I want to give this? Maybe they had something in their eye. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe I did mess up, but it's okay. I'm not going to die. So that's the difference of looking at it through love. I'm all good. Yeah, I messed up. So-and-so's mad at me. That's okay. I'll deal with it. Or from fear. Oh my God, I messed up. I'm worthless. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to die. That's really the difference.
I love that. That is brilliant. I really, really like that. It's such a
positive. What's great, Dawn, sorry, what's great is you can do this day to day. You do this minute to minute.
Yeah.
This helps with that. This isn't just some woo-woo thing we talk about at some yoga retreat. Like literally, you do it on a Monday, on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday. You do it all day. And it just it becomes a superpower. Sorry.
I love it. No, that's great. I love it. I love it because it's such a positive way to look at the world. And your experience of it is that my daughter had a disappointment yesterday, and I said to her, you know what? This has nothing to do with you. this is happening to you, but you're not the reason it happened, and it's no reflection on you. And
Right.
you sort of, it's something that you have to, I think with experience, you can recognize and you can accept. But I think it's a really good way of, like, things happen, and as I said earlier, they're not necessarily what you wanted to happen, but accept the responsibility you have for it. And then what other people are going through isn't your fault. It's just the situation that you're in, and there's always something to learn, isn't there? Really, I love that.
And one of the biggest things is two things out of there: positive thinking, which is great, but I don't want to be a bliss ninny, like, hey, everything's great. Part of this is shining the light on the darkness.
Yeah.
Like really looking at your anxiety, looking at the issues. You want to face those as opposed to just kind of pushing them away. And when you face them and you literally just, okay, I'm being anxious. All right, you sort of burns out. You just let it be. And the other point is my fault. Ironically, it feels so good to be angry. It is so easy to be angry. And a lot of us have, whether it's a victim mentality, but our identity is perpetuated by making sure that people think it's our fault, or saying there's something wrong, but it's not my fault, it's their fault,
Yeah.
or in that back and forth.
Yeah.
And so I think it's great that you told your daughter it's not her fault, because that can also subconsciously help us really critically look at what sort of narrative and story am I telling myself? Because I may secretly want, David R. Hawkins calls it a cheap payoff. I may want a kind of a payoff that this is my fault, because then I can continue going through life saying, see, I'm right. See, the world's a tough place.
Yeah. I like that. And I like that you sort of have to think about what the way I like to say it is that, things happen, but where am I in this? It's sort of like what went well, what didn't go so well, what would we do differently if you had to do it all again? And would it have made any difference to the outcome? And what could you learn, from everything that you do, every interaction that you have? Now you have got a book recommendation. The book I always ask my guests to recommend a book. Which book have you recommended?
I will. And when you said the I, this, where am I in this? The question whether is, well, what do you mean by I?
Yeah.
Is it Casey Berman identity, or is it this broader I of that we're all connected, right? So there's a great book called Sapiens. It's been out for about 10 years now. A friend introduced it to me, and my mom introduced it to me, actually. And surprisingly, I tell people this and I haven't heard of it. Or I haven't read it. It's absolutely fantastic. Professor Harari from Israel. And he's a historian, but he incorporates biology and chemistry and physics into a phenomenally engaging read of how humans came about. Really, going back, I think about 500,000, a million years ago, and then breaking out, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, and then the agricultural revolution, and how it then we ultimately became, and it's this. First of all, it's fun to read, really engaging, not a boring sentence in it. He's a phenomenal writer, but it really breaks down and makes accessible a lot of the metaphysical stuff that we talk about here. Courage, things like that. Like, he takes a lot of these really amorphous concepts and places them in this historical context. So, for example, you wonder about like identity politics and consciousness and anxiety and so on. He literally traces this not to the single cell amoeba, but if you imagine our ancestors, or you can look at it in primates now, think of monkeys, when they have conversation, they can say, hey, there's a lion down at the river, don't go there, right? What they can't say is, verbalize is, there's a lion, I'm going to distract them, the three of you go around this way, right? That's really the power of the Homo sapien brain. And so, but where he also says is that once we had that brain and that culture and that speech, we realized that there's alpha male A, I'm alpha male B. All of a sudden, we became the other, and the other with all of our identity. And so a lot of what we see nowadays, the anxiety we have is, my boss going to fire me, keeping up with the Joneses, they've got a better car, this social media, all that stuff. He literally traces back to the savannah, even hundreds of thousands of years ago, to see where this consciousness started and the benefits of this consciousness, the innovation, but also the mental and kind of emotional casualties that have come of it. It just blew my mind that a lot of what we deal with nowadays in 2022 can kind of be traced back historically and biologically to hundreds of thousands of years ago.
I love it. Yeah. Well, a link to that book, we're Sapiens, A Brief History of Mankind, will be in the show notes. So
Right.
thank you so much for that. This is the bit of the show where I talk to my guests about, how they stay focused, positive, productive. You have done an amazing thing. You left the law, you started this program, you've managed to make a living from it. You help other people. You're a family man. So I always ask my guests this, how do you stay focused, positive, and productive? And with all of that, there comes its own stress, and how do you manage your own health and well-being and feeling okay? How do you manage to do that, Casey?
Yeah, well, it daily and hourly and minute by minute. I definitely have my moments, right? So everything we've talked about today of just being observant and recognizing it. I know, my first child was born in 2007, my second in 2010, and there was a moment in 2010, 2011, where I had that moment of, okay, I can be irritable dad, like Al Bundy on the Married with Children, that sitcom from the 80s and 90s, right? If you don't know that, Al Bundy, check him out. Or I cannot,
Yeah.
and I can be more mindful, more patient, more loving dad, right? Now you go back and forth. I definitely have my Al Bundy moments, but I realized that I had these two people to take care of with my wife. I realized our relationship was a partnership, still is to this day, and that takes a lot of work. I realized my entrepreneurial ambitions, and I realized kind of brass tacks, you need to make money, and I live in San Francisco. It's not that cheap here. So, you realize all these, and I didn't want to, the foundation of it was just realizing that I'm not going to get much. The payoff I would get of being a victim and angry was less than, it was easier to do. And people would understand. Oh, there's a lot of people out there who would love to hear me complain about it, right? But the payoff was less than if I did the work to become more mindful and more patient. Now, my son's mad at me right now for a number of things, right? And so I'm still dealing with it, and we have it. And we're butting heads a little, but I'm also being more mindful about it and loving and just kind of being patient and waiting for the time when there's an opportunity to have that talk and so on. So it's still that process. But for me, it started there. And, every day I really make that choice between fear and love and how I want to view it. And sometimes ultimately it's even better when I don't have to make the choice, when I automatically am in the zone of alignment and collaboration. Because we all talk about choice, choose fear, choose love, choose this, choose that. But what if you didn't have to make that choice? What if kind of moving to love and alignment and in the zone was just something that happens organically? And so when you ask me how I do it, sometimes I just get in the flow and I'm there. But I think overall, I'll end by saying I realize this is a process, and I try not to be too hard on myself that I should have reached a certain goal at a certain time. But, today is Tuesday, and it's 7:58 a.m. And this is part of the process, and really, enjoying that moment. When we say enjoy the moment, what does that really mean? I'm still not totally sure, because time is a construct. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist, all of that. But it is there. Like, we live in a world where it's past and future and present. But I will say that when I'm grateful about something, when I really appreciate something, even as mundane as a sunrise or a cup of coffee or this conversation, when I
Yeah.
really appreciate something, that keeps me in the moment. Because when you're appreciating it, you're not regretful about the past. You're not anxious about the future, and you can really be there. And when you can be in the moment, if that's not the meaning of life, I'm not really sure what is.
I love that. That's really, really good. I love that
Hopefully
it's,
I answered your question. I kind of
yeah,
went.
you did, because it's like so what I got from that, it's an examination and it's a choice, and it's there's something around being grateful, how you choose to behave, and if you choose to behave in a certain way, that will become a way of being. And basically, and we're working our way towards that. And that's not to say that things don't happen, and they happen all of the time. And things ebb and flow, but if you choose a way to be mindful, to think of others, and to think, going back to self, what your part in it is, that you'll get there in the end, and it's all good at the end, because you want it to be. And sometimes, and at least I'm talking for myself here, there are tough times, and then but if you can work them out and then have some peace. And I always feel that when you are it's going back to happiness, is that it doesn't matter. Tough times are going to happen. Life can be hard, but it depends. And I know for myself, it depends how at peace at the world I am with how I'm going to actually manage that and be okay.
And when you say at peace with the world, that's exactly right. When you say at peace with the world, how I practice that in real life, actionable ways is I realize I give meaning to things. So with my son, who's angry, we have some family life changes going on now in a good way,
Mm-hmm.
but I realize there's fear, and he doesn't want things to change. And I don't try not to take it personally. When I take it personally as an attack, like, why is he being so frustrating? Then that's where the suffering happens, because that's not what I expect. It's not what I want. But when I realize, okay, he's acting this way out of fear on his part, he's viewing the world in a similar way. I wish he would trust, but he's not. But that's okay. It doesn't mean we don't handle it. It doesn't mean we don't have that talk. It doesn't mean we do XYZ here in the world. But from my viewpoint, I try to be, as to your point, as much as peace with it, because this is where the empathy comes in. I really try to view the meaning he's giving it to it might be different than the meaning I'm giving to it.
I really like that. I really, really like that. And I know your son will be okay. He was going to be okay. But yeah, it's tough. It is. It can be tough. And I like also the way you say that, when you view things as an attack, because it's an attack. You may feel that it's an attack on self, but if you actually examine it, is it about how the other person in the conversation or in the interaction is feeling? And then if you bear that in mind, that just changes that takes the heat out of it, I think, as well, which is a good thing to do. And
Al Bundy always felt attacked, and we laughed at it. It was a
yeah,
sitcom. But Al Bundy always felt the victim and attacked.
yeah.
And as a father, I mean, I still fall into that. Don't get me wrong. I have my victim days, but I didn't want that to be my personality.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So, Casey, how do people get in touch with you, find out about you, find out how do they work with you, be part of your program? How can people find out more about you and what you do?
Well, Don, first of all, thank you for having me. This was a great conversation. I learned a ton, and I'm just really kudos to you for doing this great work and for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And people can find me at leavelawbehind.com. We have lawyers from all across the globe working with us. So find me at leavelawbehind.com, Casey at leavelawbehind.com, or you can always find me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. It's been so wonderful to speak to you. It's been a great conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. And it's really made me think as well. And it's made me quite happy. So thank you for that as well. I'm sure that our listeners and our viewers will really, really like it. I always end and say, is there one tip, nugget, actionable point that we can leave our listeners with, that we share just before we close?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say be excited about making the unknown known. E.L. Doctorow, who was a writer and a professor, he said this about writing. I'll say it about life, but he said writing or life is like driving at night. You can only see so far as the headlights, but you're going to get home that way. And you're making the unknown, the road, the darkness through the trees or the highway known with your shining of your lights. We'll do the same thing. It's okay if things are unknown. We have an expectation that I'm going to know everything. I'm going to have control over everything, but we can't. So really, instead of being afraid of the unknown, embrace that with every step forward, with every inch the headlights cover, you're going to make the unknown known. And that allows for innovation. It allows for bliss and joy, and ultimately allows you to kind of be your ideal self.
Love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Casey. And that's it for the Dawn Jarvis show today. I really enjoyed it today and I hope you did too. And if you did, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.